Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. In Season 2 of Hacks and Hobbies, we're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, we get to speak with Kris Macc. She's a speaker, author, and consultant with an upcoming book coming out, #No Approval Needed. She helps corporations and companies be better emotionally equipped to deal with or have a good way of a balance with employees and having that emotion, because a lot of times companies feel like they are robotic. They're just looking for that bottom line. So Kris here helps those companies be emotionally intelligent companies and leaders so they can run companies that are humanized. Kris, thank you so much for joining us and coming onto the podcast.
Thank you, Junaid. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So EQ is something new that it's not new, but for the longest time, everybody would talk about IQ, and EQ is the emotional quotient of somebody or some person. And it resonated with me because as human beings, we have a ton of emotions, and how to deal with these emotions is a completely whole new way of, like, we go through life, right? And we have a lot of help from our parents, help from teachers to be better human beings. But like, tell us a little bit about, like, where did the concept of no approval needed and like what inspired you to be an EQ consultant?
Yeah. So first, let's go back to just EQ in general. So emotional intelligence is, been out for, really, the concept has been out for more than 30 years. But to your point, even though it's been talked about in business for a while, it's still a fairly new concept for many people.
Yeah.
And I was first exposed to it probably 20 years ago when I was a psychologist for the school systems. And back then, we were going around to entire school faculties and doing a train the trainer model where we would train the teachers on emotional intelligence so that they could train the kids. Because we knew that back then, if the kids were equipped with emotional and social skills, they performed better academically, there were fewer behavior problems, and lower absentee rate. So then fast forward to my time in corporate America, and I was exposed to it from a business standpoint. And it just made so much sense to me, with the background in psychology, that we experience emotions 24/7. And so what I find so fascinating about the workplace is that so many people are very naive in thinking that we can separate emotions from business. It's impossible, because that's not how we're wired from a neurological standpoint.
Yeah.
Our emotions cue us into what's going on in our environment. So it becomes critical to learn how to use them to our advantage so that we can perform at an optimal level at work. It helps us to understand ourselves better and how to navigate our emotions, how to express ourselves in a way that's professional and meaningful, how to build strong relationships, how to make good, sound decisions without not allowing emotions to get in the way, and how to cope with challenges. So we're talking about stress tolerance there. So you can see how it would be really important for leaders and individual contributors to be emotionally intelligent at work.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful, because you're mentioning 20 years ago, teachers were you're going around teaching teachers how to be emotionally intelligent. And I didn't go to school system in the United States. I went to school system in a totally different country, and back in Saudi Arabia. And I don't know what level of emotional intelligence they had, but we, growing up, it's a totally different school environment for me. And coming to the corporations, like you mentioned, businesses need to be more emotionally intelligent because the people, the humans that are running it, have these emotions. If AI or computers were running a business, then yeah, you might not need that much EQ in there, or EI, emotional
Hmm.
intelligence. Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to be better equipped. So with your experience and working for Fortune, 500 companies, and bringing this EQ, and it's really interesting because when you mentioned, right, EQ has been around for 30 years,
Hmm.
and I'm drawing parallels with user experience. That's been around for
Hmm.
around 30 years as well, because it first came up when we started using computers, because
Hmm.
that's where the user experience comes from. And there's still a lot of companies, a lot of recruiters. Like, I've never hired for a UX position,
Mm.
so I've been a recruiter for 20 years, but I've never had to hire somebody in this area. Can you tell me something about it? So it's really, really interesting because it's almost like EQ is in its own niche area,
Hmm.
just like
Hmm.
UX is, just like so many different things are.
Hmm.
So what is one thing that you've done, or like what are some things that companies are doing to bring it more apparent, or become, basically make it more popular?
Hmm. Some companies are really ahead of the curve, and they're very intentional and progressive in trying to create emotionally intelligent workplaces. I mean, I've done some really significant work with some large global pharmaceutical companies,
Yeah.
and they've had me do not only assessments where that gives people a baseline of their skill set,
Mhm.
but also some one-on-one coaching. And then we've done virtual webinars because the challenge with today's workplace is organizations are designed with a matrix design, or you have so many remote workers that people that are trying to decide how do we get training, you have to be really versatile. So
Yeah.
we don't only do face-to-face workshops and training, but we also do virtual. That way you can reach people wherever they are. And so it's really about making the training, the coaching accessible.
Yeah.
And same thing with the assessments. People can do those online, and then we do one-on-one debriefs through like a Zoom call or something. So it doesn't matter what country they're in, it doesn't matter what the time zone is, it just makes it really easy to work with them. But we always start with a needs assessment to figure out, well, where are their blind spots? So just like we as individuals have blind spots,
Mhm.
leaders have blind spots, and organizations have blind spots. So I help them identify those first, and then that helps us decide, what's the type of intervention that we need to co-create to make the most impact. And so it's really fun, and you definitely can see the impact as far as people improving communication,
Mhm.
improving, and that. And they've done a lot of research actually
Yeah.
that shows that people who are emotionally intelligent outperforming those who are not using those skills.
Mhm.
And there's actually some data that shows that those who are emotionally intelligent are earning about $30,000 more per year
Wow.
than their colleagues. And, it makes sense. I mean, these are the people that are closing the sales, they're getting
Mhm.
the promotions and the merit increases. So it makes sense that these people would earn more money.
Nice, nice. And how many sessions of a coaching with EQ does somebody require to achieve that level of improvement? And how much is empathy involved in EQ?
So I'll answer the empathy question first. I mean, that's actually one of the skills. So the model that I use is the EQI 2.0, and it's
Mhm.
it's really the most robust as far as scientific validity and reliability. And
Mhm.
that's why I went with that model. There are others that are okay. I think
Yeah.
that again, the EQI 2.0 is the most robust. So there's 15 skills, and empathy is one of them. But
Mhm.
to your question about empathy, when you're dealing with other humans,
Yeah.
that's one of the most critical skills that you have to know how to use. The problem is that it's not always easy to be empathetic towards someone else, especially if we don't like them or we
Mhm.
don't agree with them. Our empathy switch gets turned off, and we
Yeah.
need to learn how to turn it back on so that we can be more collaborative instead of having these adversarial relationships where communication breaks down. But as far as coaching goes, it really depends on the individual. I mean, I would say for most people, 6 sessions really can make a big difference in giving you that one-on-one time where you're really talking about situations specific to you and it's customized to you, and so are the strategies. And that gives you an opportunity to practice. Come back, we talk about how things are going, what we need to tweak. But again, it depends. There are some people that, maybe not need as many, and there are some people that need more. I was hired to work with an ER physician when I first started my company, and he was really struggling with the people skills part of it. And it was impacting his patient care. And so, I was hired to do an assessment. We actually did a 360 on him, which means that he was able to choose who was going to fill out the assessment on him. And then we compared that to his own self-rater assessment so that we could see where there were strengths aligned and where there were areas of opportunity to improve and where there were blind spots. So areas where he didn't see at all that he needed to work on. Which was very illuminating for him. But, he required a lot of one-on-one sessions because of where we were starting. When we first started, it was everybody else's fault. He could not see that there was any personal accountability in the situations that were contentious at work, whether it was with a patient or with another, care provider. And by the time we ended, he was a completely different person. And that was really rewarding to see because he was at the beginning of his career. My fear was that he was not going to be successful. My fear was that he was going to get fired and then blackballed because he had, there was so much data that was being collected on him that said, he was not somebody that people wanted to work with. So, to be able to impact someone's life like that was really rewarding for me.
Nice. That's really beautiful. And I can relate. I don't know if I can relate, but I'm drawing some parallels. I love parallels, and sometimes you'll see these patterns in families or siblings, right?
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting, like how people deal with it. And like I've been watching this TV show called A Million Little Things, and it's really interesting the dynamics in there between siblings, between father and son, and you see like where, because over time we build these preconceived notions about our siblings or about different people, and then you're always going to watch them from that same lens. Like you won't take off those glasses and see them from a new light because maybe there's something different. And having a good EQ or better, more intelligent, I guess, absolutely helps you look at those relationships from different eyes.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, these skills aren't just work skills, they're life skills.
Yeah.
So, the implications for our relationships, whether it be family or colleagues, is really important. And, I think when I train people to start, not just to understand the concepts, but how does it apply to my life or at work?
Yeah.
It's about getting really curious with yourself and starting to own your part in things. And, when things aren't going right, well, what can I do to change that? And, if I can start to understand what the patterns are for my choices and my behavior, that's when I can start to improve and come up with strategies that'll work for me the next time a similar situation arises. And the other thing is, to your point about the lens, we have to become so self-aware that we understand when our ego is getting in our way and when our empathy switch is being shut off. And we have to put that in the back seat, put that ego in the back seat, get real curious about what we're doing and why we're using that lens to view other people, and also recognize that we all want other people to assume good intentions about us, but we don't do the same for others.
Yeah.
And that's when things, that's when communication and relationships break down. So we have to come from a place of, understanding that most of the time
Yeah,
people have good intentions. And,
absolutely.
there's failed expectations that happen, but that's when an honest conversation needs to happen.
Yeah.
So,
One of the sayings of the prophet is that, or even in the Bible, do unto others what you want done unto you,
mm,
right? And
mm-hmm,
that comes exactly to the point that you're mentioning, that
mm-hmm,
people want good things happen to them, and they want other people to treat you well. Well,
mm-hmm.
it goes both ways, buddy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I help organizations with is creating a culture of trust.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting. I worked with a global beauty company,
Hmm.
and they rolled this workshop out company wide. And I'll never forget, one of the very first workshops that I did, there were
Yeah.
some executives that attended the workshop. And I remember one of the women saying, well, this was at the beginning of the workshop. I'm really good at creating trust because I have good intentions. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, well, let's hold on to that thought. And
Yeah.
then we did an exercise where everyone realized that they break trust, whether they mean to or not. We all do it in
Yep.
every relationship. We all break
Hmm.
trust. And, we're not always aware that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so then it was, oh, okay, intentions don't always align with behavior.
Hmm.
And so we have to understand that, listen, none of us are perfect. We all break trust. So how can we repair it? And how can we get better about thinking about building trust? Because
Yeah.
most of us don't think about it until trust has been broken.
Hmm.
We're not intentionally thinking in every moment, how can I build and maintain trust? We're only thinking about it when somebody breaks our trust.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So it was fascinating.
It's like I can't. Yeah. And one of the examples from the show was this one gentleman. If he's like, you know, if she had found out from you, if you had told her,
Mm-hmm.
she will trust you better. But since she had to find out a different way, she's not going to trust you. So you have to go through the pain and take this medication or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting.
I was going to say, on the topic of trust,
Yeah.
one of the questions that I asked in the book, hashtag no approval needed, and I interviewed women from around the world and asked them lots of different questions. But
Yeah.
one of the questions that I asked was around the topic of deal breakers, and what would cause you to draw a line in the sand and end a friendship or a relationship. And almost universally, one of the top answers was when someone breaks my trust.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting. And I wish that because my follow-up question should have been, have you ever broken someone's trust? And
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody would have said yes. But
Yes.
yet our
Hmm.
standards for how, what would cause us to end a relationship is if somebody breaks our trust. So it's just, humans are so fascinating. And I just love having people, take the masks off and be authentic,
Yeah.
which we don't always see, especially on social media.
No, we don't. We don't see that at all. And what's really interesting about human beings being interesting is that a lot of times we keep saying, "Oh, I'm rational." Not really.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
very, very irrational people.
Yes, we are, and we like to tell ourselves stories that we believe.
Hmm.
Sometimes these fairy tales and fantasies about who we are and how we live our lives, and we're not even always honest with ourselves, much less everyone else.
Exactly.
And I was trying to get them to dig deeper and take the masks off, and that was one of the fascinating things about the book. Was there were some stories that I heard that people had never said aloud before, and
Hmm.
they couldn't believe that they were, in some cases, telling a stranger the story. But sometimes I guess it's easier to talk to somebody who doesn't know you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow, those are some going to the mind hole. What's
Hmm.
really amazing about the mind, and I attended this TED TEDx here in Ashburn, and one of the speakers were talking about the mind and how there's three portions of the mind. There's the frontal,
Mm-hmm.
which makes all current happenings, attending to what's happening. Then there's the limbic brain, which
Mm-hmm.
does all of your intelligence work and all of your thinking and all of your, and then you've got the defensive brain, um, or the lizard brain. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. So the lizard brain is always, it's always up front and center in deciding how you're going to behave in any situation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
Your lizard brain is really looking at, it's looking at fight or flight.
yes.
I mean, it's responsible for other things like,
Mhm.
determining if you're going to, engage in sexual behavior for procreation and,
Right.
if you're going to eat to live. And it's
Yeah.
really survival. It's
Yeah.
those things that help us survive as a species. And then your limbic is where your brain is processing those emotions. And then
Yeah.
your frontal lobe is all the rational thinking. And so, in the context of emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
the problem is that, all of our external cues enter our brain through the primitive part of the brain, the lizard brain.
Yeah.
And then it has to go through the limbic system. That's where the emotions are processed. But
Mhm.
we don't have rational thought attached to that until it reaches the frontal lobe.
Oh
And
my
there's a little bit of a lag time there. So
Mhm.
when you'll hear the term emotionally hijacked, and
Mhm.
that's when, think about the United Airlines example where you had the passenger who wouldn't get off
Yeah.
and became, combative, and
Mhm.
you had the United Airlines workers who also were not thinking clearly and it ended up in a physical melee. If people had just paused and allowed their thinking brain to catch up with the emotional part of the brain, we wouldn't have these situations as often where people are doing things that they regret.
Wow.
And yeah. So that's one of the things that I teach individuals and organizations is we got to use the power of the pause, because we're allowing the primitive part of our brain to put us into fight or flight mode.
Oh my
And
god.
that's never a good situation.
That is so powerful because a lot, like, it's going back to the things that in our religion they teach you, like in the Quran, in the prophet says, if you're angry, change your
Mm-hmm.
state. Like if you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, lay down.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
laying, sit up. So change your
Mm-hmm.
state so you can have that pause. So then
Yes.
your next level of your brain or the flow chart, fills out and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
makes.
you got to buy yourself some time to make a rational decision and choose an appropriate response instead of just reacting. you
Wow,
know yeah,
that's so
and once you
powerful.
understand that, and
Mhm,
then also, from a leadership or even coworker perspective,
mhm,
once you can start to view everything from survival mode, like who's in fight or flight, then you
yeah,
start to look at it like, if I'm in a meeting and I say something and then I observe a response by somebody, what did I say that
mhm,
cause them to be in fight mode where
yeah,
they're, confrontational, or flight mode, which is where they shrink back and they shut down and they don't communicate anymore.
mhm,
So when you can start to look at those patterns, then you can adjust your behavior also. So there's a two-way street there where,
yeah,
we can also look at what are we doing to make the situation better or worse.
yeah, absolutely, and it's bringing me back to one situation that I was in, that now I'm being ghosted,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
So I said something to someone, and they're like, you need to blah blah blah, do this, this, this. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not going to do that because I'm listening to these guys. He's Seth Godin, he's like,
Mhm.
he's saying you gotta do what you want to do, because if you listen to friends and family, you're
Mm.
never gonna get to that point. And
Mhm.
then they probably took offense, and
Mm.
there was probably a day or two of more of conversation over text, and then after that,
Mm.
I'm just ghosted, and, like, no response, nothing.
Mm.
Like, all right, I
Yeah.
guess, I triggered something, and I don't know how to get back to that previous stage.
Yeah, I think there's a couple important things there. So, the first thing that I would say is anytime you're in any kind of communication where there's room for disagreement or there already is disagreement, to stop communicating through text or email and pick up the phone or see that person in person. Because just the fact that we're using written communication,
Oh my God.
the brain is scanning for threats all the time. That's, that lizard brain is on 24/7. And so it is looking for intent and tone and meaning where maybe there isn't any intended by the person writing it.
Yeah.
But the brain is, going to see and it's going to fill in gaps. And it's not real good at written communication. There's a lot of room for misinterpretation.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing that I would say. And then secondly, when things don't go well, I think you have to get really good at apologizing for your part in it. And, communicating that, hey, this relationship's important to me. I know things went sideways.
Yeah.
How can we fix it?
Yeah.
And I think when you come at it from a place of humility and you let people know that you care, and give a little bit of time for that emotion to settle down, most of the time things can be resolved.
Absolutely. Really good point. Be really good at apologizing. And I like to think that I might be good at apologizing, but maybe I'm overlooking that. And like you said, your mind starts overthinking and you start telling stories to yourself. No, I'm okay. I did what I should have. And that's really, really.
Well, I don't think you have to apologize for your viewpoint or
Right.
what course of action you're going to take.
Sure.
That's for you to decide. You can just say, I'm so sorry that things went sideways. That was never my intent. You're important to me.
Yeah.
I want to fix this. And you're just saying for the part of the, where communication went wrong, or if you felt that I disrespected you, I'm so sorry. Whatever that was the result.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree on the course of action that I'm going to take, because that's for me to decide. But I want you to understand how important you are to me. And, and I'm sorry, sorry that I hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I'll work on that.
I was not always good at apologizing. It took me, because my ego would get in the way. And so I think that also is important, is using your ego as a red flag alert. If you're getting upset with someone else, and if things are always their fault, if you're always right, those are red flags. Like, oh, okay, my ego's in overdrive. The ego is important. It serves to protect us, but
it does.
But it's sometimes too much for today. Back in the days of cavemen, we needed that, but now we don't need so much ego.
Yeah, we don't need it at all.
Because we need a little bit, because sometimes there are people that
just
take advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most of the time it's an overdrive, and it's making us do things to cut our nose off in spite of our face, and that's not good.
Yeah. No, that's totally on point, because we are in this environment, in this era, there's a lot more collaboration happening than the individualistic approach at, I'm going to be an island and I'm going to do everything myself. And it's definitely important to have that ego in check.
Yes. Yeah. If we want to be operating at optimal level, we cannot work in silos. There's very few jobs that you can work in a silo and be successful.
Yeah.
We have to be able to communicate with others in a way that's respectful and meaningful and helping us to get done what we need to get done.
So what are those jobs? Because I'm asking for a friend.
For the silos?
Yes.
Oh gosh, I don't even know, because anything that I don't know. I don't know what that would be.
Yeah.
I can't even think of one. I'm sure there exist.
I'm sure they do. Because I'm looking from the perspective of, I'm looking at construction, I'm looking at civil engineering, I'm looking at
all of those, you have to communicate with others, though.
Exactly. There's so much communication. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That physician that I worked with, when we first started working together, he said, I think I want to change my specialty and work in an ICU so that I don't have to communicate. And I said, okay, so you may have patients that are intubated and you're not communicating with them, but the caregivers are there, the
Yeah,
family and the rest of the care teams, and
exactly.
that's not a realistic option. It's like
Yeah.
we got to fix this, and it's not you changing your specialty. That's not
Hmm.
going to work. That's going to
Hmm.
result in failure for sure.
Exactly.
So, but it was interesting. I mean, I really can't. I don't know. I don't know what that job would be, but when you figure it out, let me know. And
No, you're absolutely right. Maybe um, driving cross country doesn't require too much communication.
maybe,
I don't know. Maybe.
maybe it's possible. I don't know enough about how much they have to check in
Yeah, they
with
do.
supervisors, or yeah, I don't know. But that's a point. Maybe.
No offense to anybody, driving cross country. Um, I did know some people in that area. Actually, my
Hmm.
cousin, he started a company where he bought a couple of trucks and he's just doing deliveries. But
Hmm.
again, communication is the stepping stone for being human, right?
Yes.
And the better you are, the better human you are.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely. It's
wow.
so
Well,
important. So important.
absolutely. I am definitely looking forward to your book, No Approval Needed.
Thank you.
It's like, and what's amazing is the more I get older, the more I realize how important it is to think, how important it is to have better communication skills. And
Hmm.
being a designer for the past 20 years, being a web design, UX design, communication is like the number one thing. You got to be able to talk to your customers. You got to be able to talk to your clients to figure out what type of message are they wanting to
Hmm.
share with their audience, right?
Hmm.
Who are their customers? So yeah,
Hmm.
communication is super important. And as I grow older, I see a lot of parallels between user experience, marketing, having good EQ, emotional intelligence, and so many different parts of life. Like, it's super super important to have, because end of the day, we're all humans working with other humans with the
Hmm.
same set of emotions.
Yeah, it's the humanness,
Hmm.
the authentic humanness that fascinates me.
Yeah.
And hashtag no approval needed was my attempt to talk to women from
Mhm.
around the world
Yeah.
to get under the layers of BS, that persona that we put out to the world, but maybe isn't truly us.
Mhm.
Get underneath those layers and talk about, their journey
Yeah.
and life and career and relationships and being a parent or not.
Yeah.
We talked about, marriage and their bodies and sex and libido and affairs and the future. I mean, so many different topics. But one of the topics we talked about was vulnerability.
Mhm.
And, I asked them, what are those things that you don't like to admit to yourself or to others that makes you feel afraid,
Yeah.
that you don't like to think about? And so, for some, that was a really difficult question
Mhm.
because they had never really had a conversation about that before, hadn't really thought about those things. And for me, I like I like the imperfections in humans. I think that's what makes us interesting and fascinating, and I love the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to talk about the things they don't talk about every day.
Mhm.
And so there's some things that are, I think when people read it, maybe they won't relate to every woman I interviewed,
Yeah.
but what we'll find is that we're more alike than we are different.
Absolutely. And you interviewed a lot of women, right?
I interviewed close to 60 women, and
Wow.
every continent was represented. These
Nice.
were all women in their 40s. Most of them were career women, with the
Mm-hmm.
exception of a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And some were CEOs, and their journey and their insight was just so fascinating. But they were all confidential conversations
Yeah,
because some of the topics are a bit taboo. You don't
absolutely.
necessarily want those associated with your professional brand, so
Yeah.
I don't reveal anyone's name,
Good. Good.
or any personal identifying information unless
Mhm.
I was given consent to do so.
Awesome.
So, so it's going to come out May 7th, and actually is available for pre-order right now on Amazon. I just did that yesterday. So,
Nice.
yeah, and
Awesome.
the website's up and running, and there's T-shirts associated with it. And so,
Awesome.
yeah, it's a lot of activity right now, but it's really exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I saw your note or a couple weeks ago, and I was like, finally, the book is done, and to
Oh gosh,
publisher.
I can't tell you. It's been so I'm self-publishing, which has been such a growth journey because the
Mhm.
book world is very, very complex.
Oh yeah.
There's been so much I've had to learn, but just even this weekend, things that should be super easy have not been easy. And
Yeah.
there have been moments of tears many times
Yeah.
because things are not doing what I want them to do. And so part of
Mhm.
that lesson is not just that things are new and I'm learning, but I have to step away
Mhm.
and pause and breathe and go do something not related to it and come
Yeah.
back at it with a fresh lens
Yeah.
because it starts to make you crazy. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, it seems like you took all of your career to come up with this book, and then, well, not all of your career. I mean, all of your experience
Mm,
in in being the consultant and having your company up for the past few years.
mhm,
Um, so that's really really awesome. How you know took your experience and took your degree and took all of that and put it all together in this nice package that people can learn how to be better emotionally intelligent. But what hobby would you wish that you got into during all of this?
so you're going to laugh at me, but I have always wanted to be a singer, but I cannot sing at all. I mean, I can sing, but it's
Yeah.
not good.
Mhm.
I'm tone deaf and I will make your ears bleed.
Okay.
But if I could like wave my magic wand,
Hmm.
I would want to be a singer because I think besides the fact that I don't have a good voice, which in my dream world that would change,
Sure.
I think I've got stage presence, and so I know I would
Nice.
have fun and I would make it fun for the audience, and I would be. It would just be an experience. However, you got to have a voice, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, that is lacking.
Well, I'm
But I
sure.
know I would be good if I had a good voice. I would be a tremendous singer.
Well, it takes is practice.
I wish.
You wish,
I'm
really?
missing the gene that,
Oh,
yeah, that allows you to hear how good or bad you are. I really am
well,
tone deaf. I'm not exaggerating that
okay.
at all.
Right. All right.
All you have to do is listen to Diana Wynn's dance
Oh yeah,
karaoke.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I did one of those with
Oh,
her.
nice.
It's so bad,
Nice.
but it was fun. But it was fun.
I've been trying to get on her radar. Actually,
Oh yeah, just send her a message. She's so
Michelle
awesome.
Pena, I think
Hmm.
mentioned that should be
Yeah,
on there, right?
yeah, and then you could interview her, but the two of you
Yeah,
could swap.
yeah,
That'd be
exactly. That
perfect.
that would be perfect. All right. So having, one thing I wanted to come back to was when you mentioned the authentic human, and
Mm.
I'm going back to Star Trek because I've been watching Star Trek Enterprise, the new
Mhm.
show that started a couple years ago, and I'm realizing why people were obsessed with Star Trek for the past 50 years.
Mhm.
Because you have Spock, who's half
Mhm.
human, half Vulcan, but
Mhm.
he's emotionally challenged,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And then you
Mhm.
have you have Christopher Pike, you have other human beings on there, and they have very strong emotions, but then they either have to scale it back, or they're in
Mhm.
roles where the emotion and the empathy is needed. For example, being a doc, being a medical examiner, being a medical
Mhm.
officer. And then there are other species, there are other aliens on there that
Mhm.
are really good at like sensing danger, there's
Right.
and it's really like obviously they're all played by human beings,
Mhm.
but they're amplifying one or two or three different emotions that us humans have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched any of the new stuff, but I
Sure.
certainly watched Star Trek as a kid, and,
Hmm.
I mean, our brains, first of all, prefer information to be told to us in story form.
Yeah.
But we want there to be an emotional connection with it. Those are
Hmm.
the things that we remember. And I mean, so even if you were to think about something like E.T., why did we love E.T.? Because
Hmm.
there was so much emotion involved in that story, you know? There
That's
was
so true.
love, there was fear, there was sadness. I mean, these are as humans, again,
Hmm.
we are wired to experience emotions 24/7, and it's at the
Yeah.
heart of who we are. It's in our core. It's fundamentally such a big part of our experience in this life
Yeah.
and our personalities, and so we have to learn how to use those to our advantage,
Nice.
both professionally and personally.
Yeah. So on that note, what would be your favorite movie or TV show?
It's a good question. I mean, I tend to like some of the funny stuff.
Hmm.
There's one movie that I don't know how I missed this when it came out, but because it's older, I just saw it earlier this year, The Sweetest Thing. It's with Cameron Diaz and
Hmm.
Christina Applegate. And the reason why I like that movie is because there are shenanigans that go on. They're best friends. And
Yeah.
the shenanigans that happen between the two of them are absolutely hysterical. And they remind me of college days with my best friend, and
Mhm.
just so, so funny. I mean, like crying, laughing, funny. It's certainly not like an Oscar award winner or anything like
Sure.
that, but just because it hits on that emotional connection and
Mhm.
taking me back down memory lane.
Yeah,
And not that we had the same things happen exactly,
of
but
course.
similarities that remind me of my best friend
Mhm.
and our time together in college. So yeah,
Those
I would probably say that
parallels,
one.
right?
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And a lot those when you're able to read a book or see a movie or listen to a song that you emotionally connect with, it triggers memories,
Mhm.
and can be very, very nostalgic. And just this was a lot of fun to revisit some of those days with my best friend in college.
Nice. So on that, um, who would you choose to be your favorite superhero?
Oh, Wonder Woman, of course. I mean, that's an easy
That's
one.
that's an easy
I
one,
have
right?
a picture of Wonder Woman on my vision board, and
Nice.
I actually, as a kid,
Mhm.
back when you're probably too young, but they had underoos, which were
Mhm.
like these little pajama kind of things. They were called
Mhm.
underoos, and they had them for all the superheroes. And
Mhm.
I had one for Wonder Woman, and I really thought I could be her when I was wearing them. So I was like 4 or 5, and I remember strategically setting up a wooden piano bench
Uh-huh.
a few feet from my bed.
Yeah.
And I thought I would jump like Wonder Woman. And so I did. I jumped from my bed onto this bench, and I landed,
Mhm.
except for the fact that then the bench started to rock back
Yeah.
and forth. And I landed flat on my face and ended up injuring myself. And
Mhm.
it just was a fiasco. But I've always loved Wonder Woman, and when the new movie came out, was
Yeah.
that like a year or two ago? I
Mhm.
thought it was so well done,
Is
and I took my kids, and I wanted to see it again. I thought it was just awesome.
Yeah, I think I've probably seen that movie 2 or 3 times. It's really good.
Yeah, it's so good. And I'm in some Wonder Women groups on LinkedIn with
Nice.
women from around the world who are
Yeah,
just brilliant, and yeah, it's just awesome. So that was an easy
fantastic.
question.
Perfect. Well, here's one of the last questions. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Oh. I would want to create my own
There you go.
because I don't feel like any of those would represent who I am today. I feel like I've gone through so much transformation, especially in my 40s. So if there was a board game called Transformation,
Mm-hmm.
that would be my board game.
That would be it. Nice.
That would be it. Yep.
Well, there's probably, I'm trying to get that number right, but there's probably 3,000 to 3,500 new board games that come out every month.
Oh, I did not know that.
So maybe there could be a board game called No Approval Needed.
Yes, that is a fantastic idea. A fantastic idea. Yes.
You never know because
that's right. You never know.
Because you're building a tribe with your No Approval Needed book.
And I've been, right? It's not even out yet. And and there's been so much support and interest and people following the journey globally, which is just blown my mind. Yeah, it's just been an awesome experience. I never really expected people to care this much. So cool. Especially as a new author, and I'm really blown away.
Absolutely. Because like you said, human beings and emotions go hand in hand, and we're talking about no approval needed. Well, because we're always asking for approval. Like, oh, should I do this? And then, and I'm guessing that's what you're doing in the book.
That's been part of the journey, especially for women in their 40s. We finally reach a point where we are confident, we know ourselves, we like ourselves, and we are not interested in your permission or approval. And that's how, when I didn't come up with the title until the end of the book. After I was done writing it, and I went back and looked through my notes, and I wanted something that was representative universally of the women that I interviewed, and that was it. So that's how we came up with #No Approval Needed.
Nice. Well, I appreciate the talk, and appreciate that you think I'm a lot younger.
Just go with that.
I'm just gonna go with that. Where can my audience find you? You did mention you have a website up.
Yeah, so finally my website developer finished the author website. So that's at Kris Macc, KrisMacc -author.com. And then there's a Facebook group for the community, and that's #No Approval Needed book.
Nice.
And then my company website is KMacc, KMACC Solutions with an S.com.
Perfect. I'll be sure to include the links in the show notes. And this was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was an awesome conversation. And you should definitely swap with Diana.
I'll definitely reach out to her. Thanks again, Kris.
Thank you, Janae. Take care.
You too. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode on Hacks and Hobbies. We absolutely appreciate your contribution. You can find additional notes on hacksandhobbies.com. Please share the podcast with your friends and tell them what you learned about our guest today.